Gentlemen, there has been a murder on the shop floor, and I do decree we must work as a team to find those responsible parties and bring them to the swiftest of justice. May the Lord join you on your journey today.
How many times did you practice that, Eric?
The entire flight home from New Jersey.
With that cold open, welcome everybody to the Lights Out podcast, the only podcast that equips and inspires manufacturing leaders with advanced manufacturing technology to thrive. And in today's episode, I'm joined by my co-host, Eric Nekich, and the long-lost St. Nicholas Goellner. Welcome back to the show, Nick.
Dude, I was here for the last one. I just missed the two before that. You've already written me off. You've already forgotten me.
You know what? You're such a critical part of the show, Nick, that as soon as you're gone for one, it feels like you're gone forever.
Aw, thanks, guys.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Let's find out who done it. I'm excited for this murder mystery.
Me
Yeah.
too.
So, in today's episode, we're going to talk about cobots and really who killed the collaborative robot dream. So let's set the stage. Picture this. It's 2015. There's a Danish startup called Universal Robots selling collaborative robot arms worldwide. The industry is really buzzing about this. Experts are predicting that cobots are going to capture a massive part of the robot market. And some forecasts had that market hitting $4 billion by 2023 with like an annual growth rate of about 50%. Fast forward to today, and that market is still growing, but just not nearly at that predicted rate that was being talked about way back then. So tonight, we are putting on our detective hats to solve this mystery. Who or what killed the cobot dream for machine shops?
Dun, 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 dun.
That was really good.
Thank you. I think that's,
Is that the NCIS song, Eric? Is that what that was?
I believe so, yes.
Well, good job. It was so good, we have copyright problems now. Thanks.
All right, so I think we should, kick into this by starting with the scene of the crime. We'll talk about the golden age of cobot hype. Guys, do you remember when cobots first started showing up at trade shows and some of the kind of demonstrations you saw? You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I can jump in right here. It seemingly overnight went from like UR robots to then like everybody. Like they were just everywhere. I remember going to the Automate show in Chicago, and I was just taken aback by the amount of cobots. I mean, brands I'd never heard of, but they were just everywhere.
Yeah, for me, I think UR was kind of like the only brand I really saw that I was just like, oh, that's a cobot. I know there was other stuff out there, but I know that like gray and baby blue, and I would see it at pretty much every show, every open house, everything I saw. Rarely did I see it in actual shops, though.
Well, and I think the crazy thing at the time when you were seeing these demonstrations at trade shows was like that robot arm was so close to the people, for the first time. No barriers, no cages. And I think that was a pretty big deal, when they first came on the market to see that and then to think about some of the possible applications and things that could unlock in terms of accessible automation. People could just go out, buy a robot arm and start to tap into that.
No matter how much you tempted it, it would never hurt you. It's like those guards in England that just can't move no matter how much you taunt them. And I would try, but I would just never get punched by the UR.
That's the weirdest visual of you taunting a cobot. You're not
come
a real
on.
robot.
But I mean, to be fair, I think there was a ton of legitimate reasons for the excitement, right? I mean, traditional industrial robots required expensive integrations, the safety guarding, programming traditional industrial robots seems very complex. And, you pair that with, the labor shortage, which is, as much a problem back then as it is today. And, it was really exciting to think that, you could just go out and buy one of these things and set it up next to your mill or next to your lathe and, have these gains.
there was this sense that anybody could go buy one and you could just kind of like get your own automation going, and there was all this cost savings that was going to be involved. And I remember those times very well.
Yeah, and you would see it too, like when you would go to a demonstration at a trade show or an open house, like they would just like start from start to finish, set it up and teach it to load and unload a machine, for example. And so you'd be like, well, that looked really easy. I can do that too.
Totally. Yeah. So I think that's our victim, right? It's the cobot dream, which kind of promised to democratize automation and solve, manufacturing's labor crisis. And I think what we have to do next now is examine what happened with these things when they started to hit the shop floor. What were some of the pitfalls, and where are we now? Let's start with collecting the evidence. What does the data show?
I'm just ready for like the Sherlock Holmes impersonation from Eric, but
it's not coming. So don't didn't work on that one.
We gotta get you on another flight.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, man. No, I've honestly been pretty curious about this because I don't have all the answers for why the dream seemed to kind of fizzle out and didn't achieve the heights that it promised everybody. So let's collect some of this evidence. What are your thoughts?
I think it's fascinating. I know we've talked about that on the floor, that there was kind of this moment in the industry where, like, I know all of us travel professionally in the industry and are in a lot of shops, and there was this moment where we are seeing more cobots still in the package than actually loading parts. So yeah, David, set the scene. I'm excited. Is it a chalk line? Like, what are we walking into here on the shop floor?
So I think the problem was there's this full promise of a collaborative robot that's easy to deploy and can replace human labor for a lot of these repetitive tasks that human beings didn't really like doing anyways. And maybe in practice, what ended up happening was it's like, okay, the integration is actually more difficult than expected, especially if you do that on a DIY basis. And maybe we'll get into that a bit deeper in a little bit. And it kind of turns out they're just slower industrial robots that at the time didn't need safety guarding or cages. And let's talk about the elephant in the room, which is speed. Every machine tending video I've seen online has the machinists in the comments going, why is it so slow? You've got these high speed machining centers. I think of like the Robo Drills and the Brother Speedios and the Haas DT for that matter. And there's many others like them. You've got these really high velocity tool changing machines that can move super fast. And then you've got this like uber slow robot arm coming in to do the, retrieve the part. Of course, I'm doing this on video and most people are probably listening, but it was painful to watch, right?
No, it's like a grandmother robot. Like, can I bring you some lunch?
It's like it was moving through cold molasses, which was by design, of course, because cobots prioritize safety over speed because they're working near human beings without guarding. But I think that was one of the problems for sure.
Yeah, I just want to say, like, kind of the counterpoint to the speed argument in favor of the cobot for a second. Yeah, they're not as fast, right? Of course. And when you've got an arm whipping around that you taunted, it will knock you out. So don't do this to an industrial robot. Don't stand next to one and taunt it because it will just knock you out.
We do put boxing gloves on all the robots at Hennig and A&E for that reason.
In case you're an idiot like Nick. No, but I mean, I just want to frame it to, okay, yeah, maybe it's moving slow as it loads and unloads a part, but I mean, if you're running 2 shifts with, no machining, it's still just tremendous gains regardless of how fast the robot is moving. Now you start to notice that speed thing when you're not just running, 1 shift. When you're getting the second and third shift and you're loading X% more because the automation is moving faster, it starts to matter more. I just think people put too much emphasis on how quick the robot moves from A to B. Sure. At least you have something that's keeping the spindle turning.
Well, I think the other drawback aside from speed was payload. There were some high payload cobots, but most of them were like in this 3 to 5 to as much as 10 kilogram payload capacity, and of course the price point increases like crazy as the payload gets higher. But that also, it can be really limiting in CNC machining applications, especially when part of that payload includes the gripper that needs to be on the end of that arm as well.
Well, and to that point, experimenting with our own automation, you kind of discover that, like, in reality, you're basically going to get 60% of the advertised payload to do like a consistent, repeatable tending operation, right? I think that when they give you payload, correct me if I'm wrong, but that assumes like right in front of the robot at a certain height, not 3 feet out inside a machine tool, picking and placing parts.
Yeah, it's like what can you bench press when the bar's right here and you're set up to like make that lift versus like can you do the same thing with like one arm way out there, right?
350 pounds. But anyways, continue, David.
Hey, if you're responsible for setting direction in your company, you already know manufacturing isn't standing still. From global trade and geopolitics to industrial AI and advanced automation, the forces reshaping our industry are accelerating, and they're redefining competitiveness and risk in real time. That's why MFG 2026 matters. March 10th through the 12th in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, industry leaders are coming together for high-level conversations designed specifically for executives who need to think several moves ahead. If you're driving growth and shaping strategy, this is the room you want to be in. To learn more, go to amtonline.org, navigate to events, and you'll find MFG 2026 there. It's time to lead with confidence.
Well, and let's be fair. Some shops are seeing great success with collaborative robots, and there's plenty of case studies out there showing that folks have experienced great ROI. And I think what it comes down to is that maybe cobots aren't a universal solution. They're not good for everything, but in certain applications, they can be really good. There's just, maybe some pitfalls to avoid in terms of how you're going to deploy that particular technology onto the shop floor.
I think the juicier piece of evidence in terms of speed versus payload is absolutely payload. If we're thinking about what killed the collaborative robot dream.
Sure. I think, too, another thing we have to talk about, and I believe it's probably better now, but early on, stability and durability on a shop floor out in the open became an issue for a lot of people in certain industrial climates. You bump into it, get the pendant out,
Okay, that's right up there with the payload as far as like what I've actually heard from real shop owners who have been frustrated with cobots is that reliability, the dependability. The best ability is availability, and when one thing goes wrong, now your robot's just sitting there being like this annoying thing you have to navigate around in front of your machine until somebody fixes it. Of course, they're supposed to be pretty easy to fix, but does everybody know how to like kind of reset that and get it working again?
Well, that's the thing, right? It's not set it and forget it. And do you have someone on your staff who's actually able to manage that and respond to those situations quickly and get that robot back up and running? Or if the owner's the only person that knows how to do that, is that the best use of the owner's time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I mean that's also an important consideration there. So I mean, we've gathered some evidence here. Cobots totally work, but not for everything necessarily. Maybe not everything they were hyped to do initially. I think now would be a good time to interview our suspects and figure out, who's really responsible for maybe that gap between the hype, the promise, and what the reality ends up being.
I cannot wait for this.
Bring forth the first suspect.
Right. You'll never take me alive, Vuyk.
All right. Well, let's kick it off with this. So, Nick, you are a sales and marketing whiz. Let's start with our first suspect, which would be marketing overpromise. Do you think that cobots were oversold in a way, or tell us your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it reminds me a bit of like the early days of additive, where it's like we won't need machine tools anymore in 10 years. So yeah, a little bit of that, and then the overpromise of like, you see all that labor, that guy who you were just complaining about who calls in sick all the time, you don't need him. You can just get rid of him today because I got this cobot for you. So yeah, a little bit of that. Maybe a lot of that.
Yeah. And I mean, to be fair, some of the marketing hype was technically true. So, for some very simple applications, the no programming needed claim. So there's like the guide through programming you could do. Definitely truth to that. The question is like how applicable was it in reality on the shop floor? I think suspect number 2 would be technical limitations. Again, on the payload capacity we talked about already, maybe just not being heavy duty enough for a lot of the heavy components that get moved around in machine shops, especially if you're into heavier machining, die work, and that kind of a stuff.
I would also elaborate that, technical limitations, payload 100%. A lot of shops, I think, don't understand some of the constraints when you're just running from a pendant versus having like integrated software and how the differences in communicating with the machine tool.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's some truth at the end of the day that by design, cobots were slower and weaker because they worked alongside humans. And what is really needed in heavy duty manufacturing applications are speed and strength, right? Which is kind of more the realm of a typical industrial robot.
I feel like some of these suspects may be working together. I'm going to make a bold accusation at the end of all the introductions.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about as a suspect misapplication, which kind of ties a lot of this together?
Ooh. That is the very bane of my professional existence right there. Yeah, working as intended, right? Yeah, and not every, again, I think like Nick said, right? Like all these kind of suspects may work together, right? If you kind of drank the Kool-Aid early on or maybe misunderstood, and sales representation, technical representation can vary vastly region to region to region. So maybe you bought something assuming it was going to work a certain way, and that did not come to fruition. It happens in more than just cobots. It happens with cutting tools and work holding and machine tools and the whole 9 yards.
Yep, absolutely.
It's kind of like buying a sports car to like haul lumber. It just, it's not the right tool for the job necessarily. Back to Nick's point, even if it is slow, if you want to call it the sloth of robot arms, it's the sloth that shows up every day, doesn't take breaks, works through the night.
The tortoise and the hare, who wins the race?
When you're home watching Netflix, it's probably still moving.
Sloth machine tool operator is the most glorious visual in my brain right now.
We should get that on a t-shirt.
A giant finger. Anyway.
Nick, you were about to say something there, and then you gave me the mic back.
Yeah, no, I'm now more convinced than ever that these suspects are working together. Because as you introduce this next suspect, by the way, I have your notes. As you introduce the next suspect, I am just like, okay, they're in cahoots. There's not one criminal here. This is a criminal organization that we have to take down. Detective Vuyk, bring me suspect number 4.
All right, suspect number 4, integration complexity.
Yeah, so this is where I know suspect 1, the marketing overpromise, was working with suspect number 4, because it's like, can it do it? Yes. And all the testing we did in a perfect environment, it worked. And then you go into an imperfect environment, what we like to call job shops, and they uncover all of these issues. And you see this all the time with all sorts of different technologies where like, yeah, they test it in a perfect environment and they're like, yeah, see, it works. It works as we programmed it to. Mm-hmm. And then you bring it into, where you get punched in the, everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face. In your job shop, and that's when it starts to be like, oh, okay, well maybe there's a payload limitation, or maybe we're using it for the wrong, we're misapplying it, or maybe we thought it would be a little bit faster than it actually is, or we didn't really think through the entire integration and how it fits into our entire process. And this whole like, well, you can just do it yourself is like really awesome until you have to do it yourself.
The underlying theme there, I think, for everyone to think about is, if it's hard for a human to do it, it's going to be hard for a robot to do it. Like that's what you have to remember and kind of like sense check these marketing claims against.
Well, and so that kind of like one thing that keeps going around in my head, right? Because we all work in manufacturing, right? Like, are these the usual suspects? I mean, is this super unique? Are these suspects just completely unique to the great Cobot caper at this point in time, or do we see this consistently?
Think about it. We're talking about like part presentation to the robot, fixturing, vision systems, grippers, which is kind of like work holding, right? And like there's elements of a robot application or an automation application like this, which is also true of traditional CNC machining as well, right? Like there's a lot going on, a lot of overlap there in terms of building a process that's repeatable.
Yeah, Eric, this is the usual suspects. This is a criminal organization that has committed many crimes, and we're just unpacking the layers of the onion here and realizing that there's a lot more than just one crime.
Yeah, we're the three guys that are going to put them on trial finally.
And then kind of something that didn't really help either is all of a sudden the market got so saturated. So suspect number 5 would be like market competition, market saturation, all these kind of low cost competitor cobots coming out of Asia, especially in kind of around the 5 kilogram payload range, which all of a sudden just brought the price point down for some of the folks that had been in the market a little longer. And I think that kind of squeezed cobots from both sides. I mean, traditional industrial robots also got better, cheaper, and easier to program as well. So, I'm not sure that helped either.
No, and to your point, like we run into that with advanced manufacturing technology all the time. We run into it with monitoring. We run into it with automation. Is people try to go kind of for this bargain. Hey, well, this one's within my budget, and it looks like I'll just say, oh, you are right. It looks so they'll bring it in, they'll try it, it'll fail, and then they automatically they're in the we already tried that room, right? And so it becomes bad for the technology as a whole. Right, where there's plenty of cobots and cobot companies that it's outstanding product when used within, the confines.
Okay, who can summarize our suspects for us just to kind of sum up this segment?
It's always marketing, guys.
Yeah. It started with this will solve all of your problems. You don't need people anymore, and you're going to run 24/7. The marketing overpromise. Yep. And then from there, it was like, all right, well, let's bring it into reality. What can it actually do with its payload and its speed limitations? And suspect 2. So suspect 3, this is the one that you've been trying to catch for many years, Eric.
Good old Marty Misapplication. Yep. I mean, you want to acquit this guy, but I mean, he needs to be put on trial. Had enough of his shenanigans.
If you're gonna go after Marty, you got to tase him. Exactly. Take him down
with an elephant taser. Do they make those? I think that's like so mean if they do. You can't tase an elephant. That's illegal.
Please email the answer to Nick's question to lightsout@makingchips.com. And in next week's episode, we'll learn about elephant tasers.
Yeah, it is advanced technology. Suspect 4. This is where we started to realize, I think, that this is a group of suspects, that this is a criminal organization, the cartel of automation, the integration reality versus the marketing claims, the whole you can do it yourself, you don't need any special software, it doesn't need to be intuitive because you just teach it and then it just knows exactly how you think and it continues on from there.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Let's talk to our international host about Suspect 5.
Yeah, competition from traditional industrial robots that became more affordable and market saturation in the cobot space with, other, manufacturers hitting the scene with just a ton of very similar looking 5 kilogram payload cobots. And so to Nick's point, who actually killed the cobot dream, which of these suspects? It was all of them. And here's the twist. The dream isn't actually dead. Time to reveal what really happened. Spoiler alert, this is foreshadowing. This might not be a murder mystery after all. It might be a story about unrealistic expectations meeting reality.
Ooh.
Okay.
Which takes us to,
Or we don't know if the victim is dead. Is that the point here?
we might just
taken?
find that they've just been hiding and we need to bring them back to life. I don't know.
Okay.
But let's get into the verdict, the truth about cobots in 2026.
Insert commercial break right there, right? Build the suspense. Okay, then we come back.
Paul, tell me about your trip to Italy.
I went there with the NTMA and we got to tour SMW Autoblok, 2 different facilities. Absolutely blew me away. World class, enormous places. I can't even count how many machines there were, but so much automation. One of the most incredible takeaways for me was the breadth of what they made. I did not know they made so many work holding products and automation products. And I loved watching a big chuck machine a little chuck. So they were machining chucks in huge lathes. I thought that was super fun.
Yeah, you introduced them to me after you came back, and they've been to my shop. And the ideas they have to like breathe new life into some of my machines and the tools and the jobs that we're running was just shocking.
And then one of the coolest things is we're bringing this new automated pallet delivery system, the Hennig workflow, to market. And guess what the interface is? It's SMW 0-point locators. It's really sweet.
We're getting ready to get some of those.
So how do people find SMW Autoblok to look through that massive catalog of products?
It's SMW Autoblok, BLOK.com.
Yeah, get rid of that C. SMW Autoblok, BLOK.com.
Boom, 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 boom.
Boop, boop, boop. Yeah, that one. Okay, and we're back.
Wow, that was really, the timing there was perfect, guys. I love that. So, guys, some shops are actually making these work. Let's not bury cobots entirely. Okay, let's be clear. The market is still projected to grow. Okay, we're seeing like a 20% compound annual growth rate versus like the hyped up initial 30 to 50% annual growth rate. This, success with cobots really requires the right application with the right expectations and the proper integration. So cobots didn't die, the hype died is probably a good way of saying that. The market is still growing and it's a market segment that's maturing. What's really interesting is that quite recently the industry actually killed the term cobot. So this pretty important, especially considering we spent the better half of the last hour saying the term cobot like 100 times. It's technically not a word anymore. So ISO and ANSI updated the US safety standards in 2025 to eliminate the term collaborative robot or cobot entirely, and instead the acceptable term is collaborative application.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, even cobots have pronouns now. Sorry.
It's like don't call me a cobot. I don't identify as that anymore. Yeah, I think there's some things that kept cobots alive, right? They're still much more affordable than a big, massive investment in an industrial application. I don't know if we can call them industrial robots either. We got to see if their naming changed, but it should be much easier to apply a cobot in most cases financially.
Yeah, and to David's point earlier, I've seen plenty of successful cobot applications where they're running them exactly how they wanted them to run. They're running on nights, they're running on weekends. So
that's right. And I mean, the big takeaway here is, look, with the old standard, you could just go buy a cobot and assume it was safe. The new standard says safety is determined at the application level. So you need to conduct an application-specific risk assessment. You need to document how the humans and the robots are going to interact. So there's a layer of complexity with that, but for good reason. We want to keep our human team members safe when they're working in close proximity to cobots. And frankly, I think in terms of de-risking the investment in automation, conducting an application risk assessment is also forcing you to look at the application that much more closely to help you kind of determine if it's the right application for that specific technology. Are you going to see the corresponding ROI? Plug back to kind of our previous series that Eric and I did on calculating that ROI. So the standards finally caught up with what we kind of learned the hard way, if that makes sense. Just because a robot can work near humans doesn't mean it's automatically going to be safe to do so.
And I was talking with Caleb, who used to host this with us, and sometimes comes on as a guest host. He's the only one of us who was actually a robotics applications engineer, and he was telling me like you can switch modes now. So you could have it in industrial mode or collaborative mode. And I was just picturing myself like taunting the robot, like, you can't touch me, you can't touch me. It's in the wrong mode, and I'm just knocked out on the shop floor because it's in industrial robot mode where it can knock you out. So that's where you have to do this application specific assessment, and also probably just don't do what I do.
Yeah.
Don't taunt inanimate objects. Literally the plot of Terminator. So anyway.
Exactly.
So guys, I mean, when do you think a collaborative robot or a collaborative application with robotics, I guess is the right way to say it now, when do you think that makes sense in the context of a machine shop now in 2026?
And this might be an unfair assessment, but I think the first thoughts that come to my mind are going to be budget and floor space. Some of the industrial robots, because of the way a 6-axis robot has to move, because of some of the guarding. I mean, they require maybe a little more floor space. We know some of the Cobot on a cart systems, even though I know we're not supposed to say Cobot, but I think everybody listening will understand what I'm talking about. Those tend to be more budget friendly, right? And those systems get really, really interesting. So those are the two scenarios that come to my mind. Tending is usually right where my brain tends to go, right? I've got like a rack or I've got a rack or a table or some sort of magazine full of raw stock, and I'm just going in and out of the machine, lightweight, really repetitive. The Vuyk manages the repeatability, so I just have to get close.
Yeah, that's similar to what I was going to say, what you said at the end there. So like the more repeatable and mundane and repetitive, the more it's probably a good fit for the Cobot, and then the more it needs some intuition and some thinking. So some of the more collaborative applications where it has to make maybe some decisions on what to load and unload next, or some decisions on basically how to keep the process running. That's where like adding some software and maybe a different style of automation more on the kind of industrial side to me, that's where it would make more sense than the DIY Cobot that you see oftentimes just like in a box next to a machine because they couldn't figure it out.
Yeah, totally agree. And I mean, part of some of the qualifying factors with that have to do with, part weight, load and unload kind of time requirements as well. If that's a goal for the automation project. Flexibility of changeovers, if you're running smaller batches versus, longer production runs, all of that plays into whether or not this is the right fit. And I think what it highlights is working with an automation partner that can help you walk through the application and really determine what is the best technology solution for this particular project, or for what your goals are in your shop when trying to achieve some degree of automation.
Leverage the experts, people.
In manufacturing, growth isn't accidental, it's engineered. But a lot of suppliers are still building their pipeline on outdated lists, inconsistent follow-up, and hope-based marketing, hoping their website will somehow bring in leads. Gabe Draper, the founder of Factor, knows that struggle. Years ago, he ran a shop that went bankrupt, not because of quality, but because he didn't have a steady way to generate new opportunities. That experience is what led him to build Factor. Factor helps suppliers create consistent sales opportunities by combining targeted outreach with marketing that puts you in front of the right buyers. Their team finds the right companies, starts real conversations, and sets qualified meetings. So if your pipeline swings with referrals or seasonality, Factor brings a system that puts you back in control. And for listeners of this show, Factor is offering a free custom report that highlights the best opportunities in your industry, plus a list of real companies that match what you do. Request yours at factormfg.com/chips. That's FACTUR MFG.com/chips.
Yeah. So Eric, you mentioned you've seen some really strong success cases with collaborative applications or cobots. So can you give us like a story of maybe one of them, of why it's so successful and why you think it was the perfect fit?
Yeah, 100%. So medical manufacturer, I won't name them, but David and I talked, and I think we're going to try to get her on the show because it's a remarkable story. But medical manufacturer in Indiana doing plastics. So, a material that is prone to deformation. You kind of got to be careful with it when you're machining on it, but lightweight, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then one of our Build on the Rock partners, Fifth Axis, has this product called the Light Vise, which is essentially designed to be loaded with a cobot. And then Fifth Axis also sells like its own shelf and rack kit, right? And a pneumatic 0 point that goes in the machine. And these are all built around the idea that you kind of buy the pieces and then you have people on the payroll that know how to like bring it all together and make it into this system. But I think the key component there is this particular manufacturer has like 2 or 3 people that are on the payroll. They're automation people. That's what they do. So it's not like they've taken someone from the tool room and said, here's a cobot, here's a vise, figure out how to load it, right? So they have the right people bringing in components that are designed to do what they want to do. And then the vise is awesome because it really gives we always say the robot doesn't care what's in the vise, right? So as long as the payload's right, it's just always loading the same vise in and out of the machine, and the workpiece is whatever the workpiece is. But because their workpieces are so light, it gives them a high level of flexibility. So yeah, I think definitely perfect storm in that regard,
As you were talking, I was just thinking about, so kudos to them for having dedicated automation people that their job is to just keep the machines running when humans aren't in front of them. Also, the humans that are in front of machines, if you want to be bulletproof for the future, become that as well. I think the machinist of the future has an automation hat that they wear, and they need to understand how to keep the machine running when they're not in front of it. In addition to all the things that make them a great traditional machinist, give me a shop full of people with that mixed skill set, and I'll show you a world-class shop.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so case closed. Who killed the cobot dream? The answer is no one, really. The dream didn't die. It just kind of grew up. In fact, the industry just made it official. They eliminated the term cobot entirely. It's now collaborative application, which is important to remember, which I think a lot of industrial automation integrators probably saw coming for a number of years. Safety has always been a really important topic around any kind of industrial automation application. So it's a more mature, realistic approach, but these robots are finding their place in modern manufacturing. It's perhaps a more specific place than the hype initially suggested, but they certainly have application all the same.
Yeah, I think you said it well. They didn't die. They just grew up and got a reality check. I mean, when you're 18 years old, you think you're going to conquer the world before you're 25, and then you realize, okay, maybe this is going to be a little bit harder. So that's kind of a nice parallel here. There's still a place. I think the key word is application.
Mm-hmm.
Just making sure you really understand the application and not just that one step in the process like we talk about so frequently. You understand the entire flow of throughput through your shop, and when does it apply? And I think another point to be made is like maybe it's a mix. Maybe sometimes it's a collaborative application. Maybe sometimes it's more of a traditional industrial robot application. We've got people like Caleb who can help you figure out exactly when to apply each one, but there's rarely a panacea in this industry where like, okay, additive, now we don't need machine tools, cobots, now we don't need people. And I think the next one that we're going to end up talking about is these humanoid robots that we're hearing about, that, Optimus is coming, and this person, this robotic person will just be able to watch you work for one day and then you'll never have to work again. I'm pretty suspicious of that suspect.
I mean, 5-axis was going to kill 3-axis, right? I mean, it's just, it kind of always happens. And I love the excitement, and that's what keeps me going in this industry. And I'm sure it's the same for you guys and a bunch of our listeners, right?
Well, I think with anything we discuss on this show, the best automation is the automation that actually works and runs in your shop and makes you money, not the coolest, flashiest tech, not the trendiest solution, is the one that works for your parts in your specific situation.
That was
Yeah.
beautiful. I think we can end it right there, David.
I feel like I'm going to start crying. It was so beautiful. Your parts, your people.
Let me get
and
you
your
a virtual
problems.
tissue, Nick. Cool. Well, let's close this out then. I think that's our show for today. Mystery solved. If you found this useful, subscribe and share it with your fellow shop owners, fellow team members, and drop a comment with your own Cobot experience. If you have one, we'd love to hear about it. And also any real automation stories that you want to bring to our attention. That's always good to work into our show. All right. Thanks for listening. Get back to running your world-class shop. Thank you for listening to Lights Out. Let's dim the lights on this episode.